We're here with Fountain of Uke blog, and I'm here with Brian Heffron, the master of the ragtime ukulele, at least in my opinion.
Okay,
And so we're going to ask him a few questions today just about how he got started, his interests, and his approach to arranging ragtime, classic ragtime for the ukulele. And so, welcome, Brian, and just start with a couple of basic questions.
sure.
How did you get interested in ragtime music?
Well, I've been listening to lots of old 78 RPM records and old cylinder things, and you start hearing these things. And actually, there was this record of that I got years ago called Master. I don't even remember what it was called. It was some Yazoo record of all these old ragtime banjo players. It was half the record was Wes Osman, and half of it was Fred Van Epps. And I thought, oh, this is kind of neat. And over the years, I kept finding more and more of it. And and after I started playing the ukulele, I decided, well, maybe I'll start trying to learn some of these.
Some of your other background prior to ragtime also included a lot of roots-based music, fiddle tunes, blues, things like that. Do you feel like that laid a good foundation for moving into the ragtime, or is the ragtime so whirled onto itself? Um, how does some of your other influences affect your approach to playing ragtime music on the ukulele? I've heard you talk about your banjo influences. You
Right.
played banjo, and some of that certainly plays into how you arrange on the ukulele. Am I right or wrong?
Oh, definitely. Um, I played mostly bluegrass banjo for quite a few years, and that's a lot different than ragtime banjo. Uh, but that's where I learned my right hand stuff, and the way I do ragtime music is in some ways more bluegrass than the old Fred Van Epps and Wes Osman, the old classic players from the late 18 and early 1900s, who actually were very big recording stars back in the day, back before not very many people had record players,
Sure.
but it recorded very well on the really on those primitive acoustic recording devices they had, and they sold very well, evidently.
You referenced bluegrass. Might you show us one or two little picking patterns that were inspired by that,
Oh,
like
sure.
maybe a forward roll or a backwards
Yeah,
roll, or some of the things that play into arranging. I know each ragtime piece is unique.
yeah. Well, but when I was first starting out, I was learning. I learned there's Pete Wernick has a book called Bluegrass Banjo, and at the beginning of that, he broke it out into different rolls. He had a roll that was a forward backward roll, went like this: thumb index, thumb middle, and you can get going fast on it, and add a little right hand and go. It's a
Cool.
very banjo-y sort of a thing, and and something that sounds a little more raggy. There's something called a forward roll, which is just go thumb, index, middle, or you can start with any finger, but it doesn't really matter. But then it goes, or you can go, take after some practice, you can get
Yeah.
going so it's fast. And of course, in any music that's not like a waltz or a jig, that puts in a syncopation if you stomp your foot. So that's a forward roll, or you can do the same thing backwards. Index, middle, thumb. I should say middle, index, thumb. Or you can mix them together.
Awesome. Yeah.
And that sort of stuff works fine. You can just hold your chords, and
That's a nice sound. Yeah.
so if you're playing with other musicians and everybody's strumming, you could do
Yeah.
some of those sorts of roles.
Well, what where would someone start if they wanted to take on a little bit of ragtime for a ukulele. Of course, most ukulele players are familiar with the 12th Street Rag
Mm-hmm.
and maybe the Tiger Rag or some of the other pieces that guys like Johnny Marvin and Roy Smack and some of the
Sure.
ukulele players made popular. But is there, I know some of these pieces can be quite daunting and actually challenging. And what would you recommend as maybe one or two pieces that somebody start with if they were looking to get into this? Or is that a null and void question due to the nature of regs just kind of being a little more technically challenging than most other forms of music?
Well, it depends on what depends on where you draw the line with a rag. Those things like 12th Street Rag is a real standard, and that's mostly just done a strumming style. If you want to learn the finger picking rags, there's a lot less stuff out there. Actually, Al Wood has some tablature up, and he wrote a little book that has very very similar sorts of styles to how I do it, and he's tabbed out a few things, and I think there might be some of those online. And I mean, I've got this YouTube channel. I haven't really bothered to tab out
What
very
is the
much.
name of your YouTube channel?
It's Heftone, Heftone, and I've got dozens of rags and fiddle tunes and fun things like that.
Are there other people out there doing the ragtime actual videos or any good groups that you would recommend people search out to hear maybe on YouTube or on the internet? Things that you should maybe you could share with the viewers. One, who would be some good people to listen to today,
Oh,
or
yeah.
look for on recordings and or videos that are out there right now. And then if you could reference a few classic ragtime artists that might be worth listening to as well.
Right. Well, if you want to see people on YouTube, you can type in uh, Dennis Pash, Pash. He's out in San Francisco, and if you type in Dennis Pash, you'll see a bunch of in the search. You'll find a bunch of videos of and with like Meredith Axelrod playing guitar, and there's the what's the name? The Ragtime Skedaddlers is a group. They don't play ukuleles, but they'll be playing them on banjo mandolins and guitars. Um, but it's just great stuff to listen to. And boy, there are dozens of excellent ragtime piano players. And if you just look for ragtime piano, there's lots of that. And what I really like to look for, if you go to archive.org or University of California at Davis, have huge archives of old 78 RPM records and cylinder records. And if you just type ragtime into one of those search engines, you'll hear the actual real stuff as it was played back in the old days, usually by banjo players or by military bands, is what they would call them. Just a band with trombones and trumpets and clarinets and such playing ragtime, and it's pretty fun stuff.
Cool. That's very cool. Could maybe you could take us out with just even a tiny little snippet of anything, any kind of a little raggy piece, just a little, I don't know, couple measures or a couple bars. And once again, this has been Brian Heffron answering a few questions for Fountain of Ukulele blog. We thank him for shedding a little light on his approach to playing ragtime on the ukulele.
Oh, okay. I guess I have to find one I can do.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Brian.
All right,
Appreciate that.
sure.